Hey, it's your girl Diane Riney. Join me every Friday, 7 p.m. on LCBN TV. Tea and a chat. Great topics, great guests. Be there. Hey, it's your girl Diane Riney. Well. This next guest, I have known for some time, and I can say I'm super proud of the young man he has become. And he has just written a book, which I am going to ask him and delve into why he's written this book, etc., and so forth. But you know the drill. I'm going to introduce him, and then he's going to have to tell us a little bit about himself, and then we're going to delve right in. Christian.
So good to see you. Thank you for having me.
Anytime. So tell my viewers, listeners, just a little bit about yourself, and then we're going to get into this amazing book that you've just written.
Absolutely. So my name's Christian Weaver, born and bred in Nottingham. And I moved to Manchester, and I live in Manchester now. I'm a barrister here. I work in the area of human rights. And for me, that captures inquests, public inquiries. And I see myself as perhaps a campaigning barrister, in that I feel that when you do a case in a courtroom, so much often comes out. And I think it's very sad if some of those things that could change society are simply left in the courtroom. So something I try and do wherever the case allows for it is actually work after the case to try and bring about genuine, real change in society. So that's who I am in the legal space. And more widely, I'm very passionate about public education, public legal education. And in that vein, I've written 2 books. So The Law in 60 Seconds, A Pocket Guide to Your Rights, which is an A to Z of all of the laws a person would need to know for their everyday life. And of course, the one that leads us to talk today, Your Right to Protest, which is a book of empowerment, effectively, and allowing you to find methods and ways to use your voice and it have maximum impact at the same time. So that is me in a nutshell, Diane.
Well, that's a lot to get into. And you know what? Let's start with the law. It's an interesting space because some of especially in the areas that you look after, and I know, we could talk about legal aid and all this, because some of the people who need to protest, need to take action, when I hear barrister, I hear ching ching. Yeah, let's just put it out there. Yeah, ching ching. And the people who normally need to protest, need to be heard, normally don't have that. So how does, it's a balance, isn't it? Human rights, and you need to be paid, that everything needs to be stuff, and the courts. Sometimes I think it's great to have people like you. I think it's amazing that you're there campaigning for people's rights. But then as you go through the system, we need more magistrates. We need, that come from a really diverse, and I don't just mean diversity in race. I mean diversity of thought, in regards to these really meaty subjects, which I'm sure that we're going to get into. What is your view about the present state of the legal system?
On the whole, it's poor, and it falls far short of what I think we should expect as a society. And the frameworks and foundations that exist for it, on the large part, probably aren't too bad. But actually, the way it's being implemented now is worrying. And a big part of that is this thing called legal aid. And effectively, legal aid is money that the state will effectively provide to enable a person to go to court and take a case to court if they might not otherwise be able to. And we've seen with successive governments a real decimation in this thing called legal aid. And what that's meant is that fundamentally, if you're a person that hasn't got much money, you could genuinely feel that your rights have been violated or infringed. And you might just not be able to take your case to court solely because you can't afford it. And what that creates is a society whereby those in power can actually get away with whatever they want to, because although the laws might be in place to stop that, because their victims can't do anything about it. The de
Mm.
facto, the real life implication is that those in power can do whatever they want, and I see that in my cases, and that's deeply worrying. And you make the point about, you know, when you think of barrister Ching Ching. I think when I was going through about to start law course, I think I thought the same thing. I can tell you right now, if you're a human rights barrister, it's different because a lot of the cases you take on are cases whereby you might opt to take on the case and not get paid because the person has no money, and it raises those ethical questions and also to do so. And you know, there are many cases I will take on where a person might not be able to pay, and you take it on knowing that all along. But absent you taking it on, the flaw in our system, or our system, is so flawed they will otherwise not have representation, and that is a deeply troubling and worrying thing. And I can list you so many examples. I'm sure some will get into where that's been a reality.
Yeah. And I do think, you know, not getting into politics, do you feel or see that this legal aid situation is going to get better anytime soon?
Well, we've obviously got this new government now, this new Labour government, and one would like to think that a Labour government might be, just by sheer of their stance on matters, their type of politics, might be more receptive to
Yeah.
calls for there to be enhanced legal aid. I was at Labour Party conference just this weekend, and they were saying the usual things about money's tight. Those things might not be possible. And of course, there are so many competing objectives. There are so many things going on. I will always, as a lawyer, make the case for legal aid being at the very top of those priority lists, because I see the devastating consequences that take place when there is an absence of legal aid. And it means that, you know, I think a massive example is inquests, whereby an inquest is where somebody's died and there's an investigation to look into the circumstances of how that person came to pass away. And in many circumstances, a family don't have an automatic right to have legal representation unless they can pay for it. That's the only way they'll have it. But the other sides that might be in some way culpable or in some way responsible for the person's death, they do get legal representation. So all of a sudden, you have this real imbalance in these courtrooms, huge imbalance, yeah. And then fundamentally, that means that when the process is over and, you know, you look at all the findings, it's very skewed often because one side has legal representation, the other hasn't, and we haven't got to the truth. And that then can cause future deaths because the matter that needed to be addressed wasn't addressed. So it's a very serious issue. So I would say, for the safety of the society, for our society to just, you know, we in this country, we often like to make out that we're really ahead of others when it comes to the law and legal rights. And yes, these laws might exist on paper, but if the public can't activate them because they can't afford to, cost of living crisis, the rest of it, it's all an illusion.
That really makes you really think about it, because it then doesn't give equity, you know. It's not equitable, and that people who have the money, I just remember something really, really to do with myself, and it was in regards to a situation in regards to my car, and it malfunctioned, and then obviously I took the manufacturer to court because it injured me. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And I was so mad, annoyed, because I'd been injured, and to the point where now I can't do something. I will never be able to do certain things, yeah, due to this injury. But because the manufacturer has so much money, they longed it out because they were hoping, which that's just not who I am, they were hoping that I would go away. No, that is exactly what they wanted to do. I did not, because that's just not who I am, because I just kept thinking this could one day could be devastating and could be fatal to somebody else. But it was how they used the imbalance of power, you know. They had how many lawyers and barristers, and it was just me and my little you know. But I just remember feeling, this is so not right. And if you're a different type of person, it's intimidating, it's scary. And just because you want to do the right thing, you know, you're not always able to. You know, I was able to keep putting the money in, but it was a lot of money. It was,
Mm.
you know, and that's when you get to that, but I definitely hear you. And mine is a case of just to do with a malfunction. But if it was something else, you know, you can see how that imbalance can be absolutely devastating. Devastating.
Absolutely. And we live in a society whereby it's not like we're taught law isn't part of the curriculum, or certainly not in any comprehensive way whereby when you leave the education system, you know your rights. And that even creates an imbalance, because in situations like that, there's not only the imbalance when it comes to teams being lawyered up, but actually there's the imbalance in shared information, because they
Mm,
have access to the textbooks, the resources, or people that can fill them in on that knowledge. And then an individual like ourselves, we might not, we don't. And because we're not taught these things in school, we really are starting from zero against an institution that fundamentally, after your, sounds horrific case, awful case, there'll be other cases that take place, other cases that take
exactly.
place. This is they know how to operate the system in a way that for you this was an event in your life that was awful, and you're having to now get all of the information. They do this day in, day out. So it's for those very reasons that it's imperative that this
Yeah.
system, such that when we enter it, there's some level of equal footing, so we can
Yeah.
at least properly put our cases. In the same way the other case will certainly be trying to put theirs. The other party, rather, will be
Yeah.
certainly trying to put theirs.
Yeah, I definitely. And I definitely, you hit on a good thing there, because I am very passionate about schooling. Yeah. And about the
Mm,
educational system. I personally think it's broken. I think it needs to be reinvented, literally restarted. That's my personal view. Not just with things like the law, even down to basic stuff like budgeting. Okay, yes, we need maths, but make relevance. Like, also we should
mm,
do budgeting courses. We should do things about, even if it's just one term where you learn about just basic things about your rights in regards to law. I think these things will make a like you said, a more equitable society, number one.
yeah.
Number two, it would make you more informed, more informed. I have the amount of young people I work with, and I've had to say to them, whether it's about stop and search, whether it's whatever, you have to start with telling them, but this is actually your right.
Yes.
They have no clue.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
even
Yeah.
even if you know that, it would help with situations that, even like if you are stopped and you're kind of, there's maybe a confrontation, because you don't know your rights, because it's a frightening situation, because there's this imbalance of power. These
Hmm.
things maybe be able to be prevented if we were more informed and educated. So I'm very passionate that that should be part of the curriculum, the same way we learn about sex education and whatever they learn these days, because I went to school a very long time ago. But I think these things are core compartments for life.
Absolutely. And I think everybody benefits. So, taking a stop
Yeah,
and search example, if we're taught our rights properly in school when it comes to a stop and search situation, firstly, it means that it's very likely that if the officer is aware that the person they're about to stop and search knows their rights, I imagine that will make the encounter probably a more appropriate encounter to start with. But then it
exactly.
also means that when a person is being stopped and searched, let's say it's me, and let's say I don't know my rights, an officer might be doing something that's actually legitimate, but because I don't know my rights, I think, no, you can't touch my, you can't do that. That makes it then, that can up the ante. The officer's thinking, but I actually can. So actually everybody benefits, ironically,
Yeah.
if everybody knows their rights. It's not like I'm trying to suggest, or I'm sure you're not trying to suggest, that there should be any unequal footing. It's no,
No, not at
everyone's being on the
all.
same playing field. Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
Yeah. And I think it would diffuse a lot of situations that happen. Because, like you said, if you think, well, you're not supposed to do this, and then they say, oh, why are you being aggressive? And then it just spirals, and it never needed
Hmm.
to. So I do think
Absolutely.
there's a big, so there you go, Christian, campaign away. I will be with you with my little
Hey,
banner. But I
we've got this
definitely
now.
I definitely think it should be. I really do. I think it is so key, because when you become an adult, you realize there's so many compartments and complexities to life. And if
Mm,
somebody had taught me about budgeting, about the law, and other things in life, I think it would be a societal benefit for everyone,
Yeah.
everyone. So that leads me on to
Your right to protest.
why did you write this book?
So the book's actually dedicated to a little boy called Owabishak, and he was a little boy that died due to exposure to mold in his home. And something I observed when I was representing the family in their inquest was the fact that his parents were powerless. They complained so many times to the landlord, Rochdale Broward Housing, about the situation in their home. They complained to everybody they saw, and there was nothing they could do. And the mold in this house eventually led to the death of the little boy, Awab. And the law has, as a result of a lot of campaigning after the case, in fact, at the Labour conference I was just at, Angela Rayner, the Deputy Prime Minister's opening speech, she confirmed that she was now going to tackle damp and mold in homes and push out this Awab's law that we campaigned for to the social housing rented sector and the private sector. So I can talk more about that, I'm sure, later on, but that was a big step. But I recognize that there are people in this society that just don't have power, and the worst situations could be going on around them, but because they don't have power in this society, nothing is done. So fundamentally, this book's a book of empowerment. And yes, it touches on your right to protest. So if you're taking to the streets, knowing exactly what you can do, what if you do might put you in a tricky legal situation, how to respond if the police interact with you. The reality is, and this is, you might not think this if you've listened to the rhetoric from governments gone by, but there's almost been an assault and attack on this notion of protest. But actually, protest is enshrined in our human rights. We have the right to expression, freedom of expression. We have the right to freedom of assembly. These are things that are the cornerstones of our right to protest, and they are rights we have. So part of the book is to do a job of reframing that and making people recognize that, yes, you can protest. Then the second thing, as I say, is going far more widely and telling you things about how to talk to your MP, how to communicate with someone in authority, how to write a freedom of information request, how to empower yourself, strengthen yourself up so that if you need to go to war or fight for an issue, you know how the law reinforces you and backs you up.
Even like what you just said, I mean, I know this, but there's so many people who don't, about the Freedom Act, that you can request to find out certain things about what is in the public domain. But even that, it might sound something really small, but it's major that
Huge.
you actually can request this, and that's that,
Yeah, precisely. And that's a prime example of where the law itself is actually not bad. That's a really good power that we as citizens have. But if we're not educated about these things, then again, it's an illusion because we don't know it exists. And then it leads you to think, well, actually, is the reason we're not educated about these things deliberate? Is there a deliberate attempt to, politicians can tick these boxes so they look great on paper, but they deliberately not educating their society about their rights, so they can't actually activate them. But the Freedom of Information Act, the requests that you can make as a result of that have uncovered things such as the MP scandal, the MP's expenses scandal, whereby a few years back, MPs were spending money on things that they really shouldn't have been. So really key, important things. So yes, absolutely. And this book seeks to really empower that average citizen, along with my other book, The Law in 60 Seconds, so that given the education system...
Yeah, we didn't know about that one. That one sounds very good.
Hey, Diane, your copy's coming in the post this week.
Yeah, I'm telling you, that's, you know what, because I'm going to give it to my teenage girls, like this, read this, because as I said to you, I'm quite active in this space like yourself. So I have a little bit more knowledge than maybe the average Joe. But I want my girls, because I had a situation with one of the twins. She was in her school uniform. Yeah. I was in the car park with her twin, and I said, quickly go in and get A, B, C, D from whatever supermarket we were in. I won't name them because anyway, she went in, but then we were sitting there thinking, she's been a little while. So somebody said to me, when I got to the door, she's in tears. I'm like, the security guard had taken her to the back of the supermarket to search her because he thought she stole something. Well, you can imagine.
That's the wrong mom to do that,
Hey. But my point is, she would have felt a little bit more empowered if she knew that they're not even allowed to do that.
No,
Honestly, I was,
whatsoever.
anyway, it got dealt with, as you can imagine.
Mm,
But it really, for a while, she would not go into supermarkets without us because it was a horrible experience for her. And I just think it's all those little things when, if you actually knew, when I said to her, do you know you could have, he was not allowed. You're a minor.
yeah.
He
Yeah.
took you to the back. I mean, honestly, there was so many stuff that were broken, but she had
Mm,
no, she just thought because he was a security guard, someone in power,
yeah.
that he had the right to do that. So it's even in those little things, that even myself missed because I didn't even think, I didn't even think to tell her those sort of stuff. But yeah, these are the things that I think, things like in 60 seconds, just stuff that you just have some kind of awareness of what
Yeah.
your rights are.
Absolutely. Funnily enough, it's interesting you use that example because that very example is in both of my books because these are the everyday things that can happen to us. And the problem is, as I'm sure you might have even seen, but these micro instances where we go through life and things are going wrong and we're not able to exert our rights, it actually can erode your confidence. So,
It does.
you can find that over the span of a lifetime, you're at the shell of the person you could have been because these instances have happened, and then maybe a few years later you've learned that you shouldn't have been treated like that, and it's actually an active violation.
Yeah.
And if we can empower ourselves with knowledge of these things, it helps protect those situations. And I feel like there's a real push right now to really encourage people to be in self-development and being optimizing our lives and everything. And I think books like this are a key part of that because it allows us to be on the front foot for those encounters we might experience as we're going through our life. But I'm assured that with your daughter's having you as a mum, I know that situation would have been
Yeah,
dealt with.
well,
So they
yeah,
were
yeah.
lucky, but it's for the other people that aren't.
Yeah, but can you imagine? That's my point.
Yeah.
If someone like myself, that still has been something that has happened. Do you see what I mean? Can you
Yeah.
imagine if it's someone who is less educated in the sense of having an understanding of the law, having an understanding of this and that? What could have happened? Because my biggest thing was obviously what happened totally was wrong. But it really, as you said, Christian, knocked her confidence so much. And I just thought, this is terrible. And that's when I dealt with that particular supermarket chain. I said, the psychological trauma that you've caused my child is something that is a little bit, you saying you want to do this and I'm sorry and all that. I can't take her experience away from her. It happened, you know. But in all fairness to that chain, they were going to do some training to all of the security, because obviously I threatened to go to the press and all of that. So that probably helped. But yeah, but it was an experience. And like I said, I now always tell the girls about their rights. Even like, in my own family, I've got so many examples. One of the twins is in a wheelchair. We went to one of the big parks and it says for disability and it was a ride that she could go on. Yeah. And she was faced with, and this is when you know your rights. The lady said to one of the one of the twins, sorry, you can't go on this. And she was so rude. She was so discriminatory. Honestly, it was terrible. But my little trooper said to her, do you know the Disability Act says that you cannot? She quoted her chapter and verse. And that's what I'm saying about giving you that empowerment and that confidence, because she knows the Disability Act and she knew that what this lady was telling her was incorrect.
That's powerful. That's such a
I
powerful
know.
example.
I know.
Yeah.
And what she actually said, which I absolutely loved her for, is she said to the lady, forget what you said, but how you've made me feel is not okay. And that park offered her a lifetime of free park, and everything, all of their parks.
Wow.
She declined.
Oh, that's incredible.
I know. She declined.
I
She said,
respect that so highly.
I know. I couldn't believe it. She declined and said, "I will not be bought because I just want it not to happen to any other person who's disabled." Oh, I was so proud of her. But that's because I've drummed into her about the Disability Act. What's this? What's right? What's wrong? And that's when we know
Mm.
that education is powerful in regards to these kinds of things.
Yeah, and it also and it means that for any other person in the future that might be in a wheelchair and wants to go on a ride as well, they won't receive treatment as a result of how
Exactly.
your daughter stood up for herself. So it's this thing about we're not just empowering ourselves, but we're actually changing things before because I understand why you're not naming the park, but these big parks have existed for years and years and years and years. And there would have been situations where if they'd wanted to, or they'd been trained to, they should have acted differently to that
They
situation
should
because it would
have.
have arisen before. So the fact that your daughter was strong enough to do that will have made a change for the future, which is why it's
Yeah.
so important that we empower ourselves with our rights. It's
Yeah.
incredible. I love that story.
Yeah, I love it. So when you went into law, did you always know you wanted to be human rights lawyer? Come on, tell me, because I
Yeah.
always knew. I remember you. I'm not
Mm.
surprised you went into that area of law, but is it something that you've always wanted to do?
I think so. Yeah, law is a. I think there are so many different types of it, and I think my angle was always, if I'm going to go into this area, I want to go into an area that's people focused, where I can actually help people. I had no enjoyment about reading contracts or in a sense of just helping a big business. Like,
Yeah, yeah,
no,
yeah.
never. That was never what I came in to do. And don't get me wrong, in some of those modules at law school, I did very well. But actually, what I wanted to do was be working with real people with real issues who actually
Mm,
need a lawyer, because absent them having a lawyer, the system's going to walk all over them and violate them fundamentally. And that naturally limits the choices you have as a barrister, right? There are only really two chambers in the whole country that do really the type of work I wanted to do. And I was very fortunate to get into one of those two. So yes, I always had a focus. I'm sure there were times when I thought, maybe to get into the profession, do I need to start in another area and then kind of start narrowing it once I'm in? But fortunately, I didn't have to do that. I was able to go exactly where I wanted to go to, and I'm so pleased for that.
very
But
interesting.
but I think it's interesting because I think even I suppose your experiences shape you, right? So even the context with which we've met, and the work we've done together, and how it's been about empowering society and
Yes,
justice, all of
yes.
these life experiences are the things that then inform, how do I want to spend my waking days on this earth? And yeah, they all play a part. But yeah, human rights for me for sure.
Hmm. So, what is it about this book? Because obviously, I see on the TV, you turn superstar regarding human rights when and it was such a sad situation regarding the damp and the death of a child.
Yeah.
Let's that all of these sort of issues. There is a human being at the center of it, and I think that's something we should never forget. And so I'm assuming when you wrote this book, it's that very thing, isn't it? That these are human beings at the center.
Yeah, yeah. And it's, when my publisher actually approached me with the idea, and then we built it together, and my passion as to why I thought it was so important was, yeah, the cases like you just mentioned. But I think, I don't know if there's a word in the English language that quite describes what I'm trying to articulate. So I'll just explain it out. But
Just
it's
say,
this,
yeah.
I'll just try it, yeah.
I guess on
But
a
it's this,
journey. We'll be with you.
all right, cool. But it's this idea that we live in a society that's actually trying to tell us that we don't have power. So almost to combat that, it's almost like we have to be quite proactive or I feel like I have to be quite proactive in showing people, no, you do have power. Here are things you can do. Because if you listen to what our governments are telling you, protest has become this thing where, it's about how can we police protest and all of these, it's not about protest is a right. So how are people able to use their legal right in a manner that doesn't encroach on the rights of others? They're all fair conversations, but this notion that we need to police protest and more police officers to deal with protest, it's just the wrong angle to approach things from. The outcome might be the same, but it's the completely wrong angle to approach things from, and that's led a lot of people to feel they don't have power at a time in society when I think history will look at this period of time in society as one where there were so many things going wrong and people realizing we actually need to make our voices heard, because absent as making our voices heard, we are going to be completely ignored. The Awab case you spoke about, this Awab's Law campaign that, the Conservative Party started the process, that Labour are hopefully going to fully finish the process. But those things only came about because 180,000 people after that case signed a petition saying, we want an Awab's Law. It only came about because papers like the Manchester Evening News did not allow it to leave the news cycle. So that's what actually brought the change. It's not by nicely asking. Sometimes it is, and whenever you can, that's a beautiful way to go about things. But sometimes by saying, no, we demand this change. In the same way, when your daughter was at the theme park, she made very clear, no, this is wrong. And then everything kicks into motion. But you almost need to have that sometimes slight bit of an aggressive shock to start things off, for then people to just do the right thing. And of course, if that can be avoided, it always should be. I'd love that to be the case. But sometimes you have to be that bit more firm, especially when the law is on your side and you're doing the right thing.
But what would you say? It's an interesting point, because I had a conversation with the girls about this. Now, how things have been structured, from what I can see, is there's a very thin line between freedom of speech, freedom to protest, and then it becoming criminal. Do you know what I mean? And I think when I listen to all what's going on at the moment, there's a fear to protest at the moment because of this very, thin line between protest and when does it go into what is now considered criminal, um
Yeah.
and I think that's scary for me. I think that's scary. It's a scary time, because
Yeah.
obviously I do not advocate for abuse, or when protest becomes dangerous or inciting hate or any of that, not at all. But there has to be, I just feel, and I'd love you to tell me, no, you're wrong, that it feels like if you're protesting now, I don't feel protected by the law, put it that way. I don't. And I know
Yeah.
there's many people, my friends and colleagues, who feel the same.
Yeah, I would agree. And that's exactly what government wanted. When government were making these attacks on protesters, that's exactly what they wanted. They wanted to deter the reasonably minded person to take to the streets. That's what they wanted. When they brought in the Public Order Act, the newest Public Order Act, these pieces of legislation that really eroded away at the power to protest, that's what they wanted. And then, of course, that creates a fear effect. They call it the chilling effect. It's actually a recognized thing because, unless you're fully educated on the law, you're going to protest and you're thinking, and I've heard in the press that this right to protest is being eroded away and that the law's changed. I don't know exactly what those laws are. Might I be doing something that makes me fall foul of those things? And of course, that's going to create fear. And the reality is, I talk about the human rights we have, there are limitations imposed within that. So this Human Rights Act isn't kind of blindly saying you have the right to do anything you want. No, it's saying, yeah, you have these rights, but here are the limitations that can be imposed. So it was never an unfettered right anyway. There were always these limitations that existed, but just what we've seen from successive governments, and the Labour government have given no suggestion that they plan to change this, but it's just a further real attacking away at this right to protest. So it's deeply worrying, and it has this chilling effect. And the problem is, that if reasonably minded people like yourself are feeling this, then actually for other people, it might lead them to think, well, if going down the peaceful, if wanting to do something peaceful might still land me an issue, then actually do I do something more extreme? I entirely don't condone such behaviors. But this is the problem with governments that try and maybe attack things too much. Actually, respect the human rights. Then overall, it probably gives you more of the society that you actually want in the first place.
I agree, because I think by them imposing some of these restrictions can make you actually more angry. You know what I mean? And then it can potentially push people to be more extreme, and I actually think it's pushing people down the route that we don't want to see. Nobody wants to see. Do you know what I mean? So let reasonable people be able to protest reasonable, say in a way that is not harmful to others, and it just puts you in a real, you just feel like you're in this little catch-22, kind of just running around with the headless chicken, because you're like, well, I want to do this, but can I? Is that okay now? Is this not okay now? Because I have so many people say, oh, they can't protest. Yes, you can protest, but there's just limits have been put on it, isn't it? I don't know. That's what I'm saying. It's confusing.
It is, and even the way we're having to angle this conversation in a really ideal world, our politicians are people that we vote in. So it's very sad that society's become such where it's almost people versus government, people versus politics, because actually your member of parliament is meant to be the person out of your community that you send to parliament, so they can represent the voices of all of you,
advocate for you.
And it's so sad that over time that's become so it's just thinned out. So actually it's a bit of a us versus them now. We've of course got a new government, and I really hope things change with that, because I mean, with the previous government, from Partygate, so during COVID, during the pandemic, when we found out our politicians were partying, those things really reinforced that. And I really hope this next government can change some of those things, but we will have to wait and see, I suppose.
Yes. As they say, the jury is still out with that. With that.
Absolutely.
So what will our my viewers and listeners? What are some of the key things that they would get out of your new book?
That's an excellent question. I think the key things they'll get out of this one are they will realize that your right to protest in some ways it can maybe confusing title, because although if you're the person that's inclined to take to the streets to protest, it will tell you all of the fundamentals you need to know in relation to that. Actually, if you're a person that's watching TV and just really frustrated at something you're watching on the news, it will teach you how you can protest in relation to that. If you're scrolling through your Twitter timeline and you see something that disappoints you, it will show you, okay, what actions can you take as a result of that right now? How do you go on a petition website? How do you sign a petition? What strength can come out of a petition? How do I message my MP on social media for it to have a bit of an influence and a bit of an impact? So I want it to be for, yes, the person inclined to physically take to the streets and protest, but also I think I used this example, the 70-year-old grandmother cooking cookies for her grandchildren, who actually, as she's doing so, hears something on the radio and thinks, that's not right, I want to do something about this. There are so many people right now that hear things that aren't right, but then that's where it ends. They think, I actually don't know how to go about doing anything about this. They feel the chilling effect you speak of, where they think, if I protest, I could end up in a police station and I've got kids to feed. I want them to know that, okay, whatever information they hear and whatever action they then want to take, this book will allow them to assess some of the actions they can take, their consequences, and fundamentally empower them. And I think the deep psychological power that can give to a person is huge. And I think if we all have that, it will create genuinely a better society for all. I'm not trying to, enable a certain group to push their message over others. Our human rights are for all of us. But I think it can really, really empower you. And that's the key thing I want people to get out of this, Diane.
Yeah, because I'm gonna send it to a friend of mine who's going through a situation. She actually, the very thing you just said, something happened to her son who has global delay and has, I think he's 21 now, but he's got a mind of maybe a 13-year-old or someone younger, and how he's recently been treated. It's an ongoing case, so I can't really go into depth of it, but he's been treated like an adult, and he doesn't understand the law. He doesn't understand anything, and they're trying to tell him he must plead guilty, and they interviewed him without a responsible person, without it's terrible. And I said to her, you need to, this is not okay, because he doesn't understand, it's things like that when these are the things. And she's now adamant that she needs to advocate for people who do not have the mental capacity, that they be giving a different treatment because they don't understand, even though they're an adult, you know.
Yeah.
And I said, no, that's something you must really, and I've said to her, you need to take this further because there are, if this is happening, has happened to your son, there are many people that it's happening to. Many.
That's incredibly important. I really hope she does. I really hope she does. And that's an awful experience for
Yeah, I'm going to
to have
send her
gone
the
through.
book. Don't, we're going
Yeah.
to send her the book.
But funnily enough, the law in 60 seconds, which is the one before, that breaks down, for example. This one does as well, but that one is a larger book. Exactly the minute you enter that police station, everything a person needs to know, questions you can ask
Wow.
the officers, what documents to read in advance so you understand how long they can detain you for, when you can, what your right to remain silent is, when it should be used, when it shouldn't be used, not as advice, but in terms of so you can assess it for yourself. So I think the two together, and I've
Yeah,
deliberately
it's going to
priced
make
them
her,
as,
yeah, she's going to be after your
yeah.
job, mate, Christian.
But yeah, I mean, deliberately, they're you won't find cheaper books in the bookshop. They're priced incredibly low, just so people can actually access this
Yeah,
information.
yeah,
But
yeah.
it's so important, yeah.
Mm. So tell me, how do you what how do you feel when you're writing these books? Like, writing is not easy. I tell people all the time, yeah, writing is not easy. So you writing this one, especially when it's got such a passionate and sad situation of
Mm.
why you felt the need to, off the back of the case that you went through with your clients. How different was writing this book compared to the first book?
Passion fueled both of them, and I think that helped a lot. So for this one, it was, of course, passion as a result of the Wadi Jacques case. For the first one, it was passion as a result of a desperation of, or the recognizing that people just are being exploited and violated because they don't know their rights. So that could be
Mm,
because my friends are being stopped and searched and they're just being treated awfully, and they don't know where the line is between what the
mm,
officer is doing that's legal and what it isn't, what isn't. So there was passion behind both. But of course, it's a long process, and passion doesn't
mm.
take you through all of it. So you find mechanisms and approaches to aid you in doing so. Funnily enough, I'm in the process of trying to start a bit of a community where, things I've learned on my writing journey, but also other people that are writing for impact, writing to make a difference, how they approach things. For me, it was things like, you have to think outside the box. So I wrote a lot of the book on my iPhone and through voice memos. So on the Notes app, through voice memos, because I found that when I'm in movement, so I might be walking to
Yeah,
work or whatever, that's when my brain is sometimes the sharpest. So actually, only when it gets to the deep editing stages where I'm having to look carefully at different, is this comma in the right place? Is that full stop in the right place? That's when my laptop's out. But before that, actually, my writing experience is almost in the pockets of my everyday life. In between the meeting,
mm,
get out my iPhone, put a few notes in,
mm,
and
mm,
that's what eventually can create the full book. But
mm.
yeah, it's interesting. There's something brilliant that's come out of social media and something so negative. But I think on social media they really romanticize this idea of
Oh yeah,
writing, having your coffee
yeah,
by you, and it's no. I mean, maybe that works for some people, but I think the reality is you have to find what works for you. Because if you follow these things, you ain't writing a book. It's not going to
yeah.
happen. So yeah.
And and where do you see yourself, Christian? Not in 5, 10 years, but what is your ultimate that you would want to achieve in regards to this area of law that you're a barrister now? What's the next level or stage for you? Is it owning your own firm? What do you see for Christian?
I am truly taking it day by day at the moment. I think there is so much information that's coming into me. There are so many things that I'm seeing that I'm having to every day adjust a little bit in terms of what I'm actually aiming for exactly. Um, it's I'm partly able to assess that in moments where I think, I wouldn't want to be doing anything else right now. And then I can kind of package that and think, okay, maybe more of that. And I've found that, when I'm working on cases representing someone that doesn't have power and they're actually starting to get answers and things are starting to change in society more widely, I think that's a beautiful feeling because it almost, if I am ever blessed enough to have children and whatnot, it's the little things that create a better society for them as
Yeah.
well. So
Yeah.
I'd like it to incorporate something to do with that. I've also found a real power in writing, not only to benefit others, but also to actually distill your own thoughts and ensure that, when you have even conversations like this, there's probably an extent to which I'm slightly clearer than I would otherwise have been because I've committed this all down to writing previously. So that means in my overall interactions, I can try and spread this message of empowerment because of the writing process. So perhaps those two things. But if I'm honest, I'm still molding it and finessing it as I get more information myself.
Yes, yes. So give me your top three pieces of advice that you would like my audience to leave with in regards to your book. What three top pieces of advice? You still need to buy the book though, everybody. You're listening. We need to support. But what would be those three key pieces of advice that you would like the viewers to leave with?
I think I feel like advice for the book will always chime in with life advice as well. So things that, because I think everything's tied in together,
Yes,
right?
yeah, I
So I think
agree. Yeah.
So I think life in general, one thing I've always lived by is try and act out of, or always try and act out of strength and not weakness. So whether it's something you want to campaign about or anything happens in life, always think, what would the strong version of myself do as opposed to the weak version of myself? And I think naturally, if a person acts like that, there might be occasions where they think, no, I need to stand up and do something about that. And I think that's when books like mine will fill in and will give you the tools to do so. I think that's the first one. I think the second is always try and empower yourself. So whether that's empowering your mind through knowledge, whether it's empowering yourself through legal rights, whether it's even things like having a base level of general fitness so that you can hit life that bit harder, whatever it might be. I think that's a really powerful thing. And I think the third one is always treat people with kindness where you can. And I always make a distinction between kind and nice, but I think kindness is a beautiful thing and actually quite a powerful act as well. And I think especially in this area of law and some of the cases I've taken on, might be a perception that, I'm going for everyone and I'm aggressive. And actually, I think there's perhaps a time and place for that. But I think so much more can be achieved when you acknowledge that everybody's human, even some of these politicians. And I think all of us, I'd like to think in some ways, we have a good nature. And I think if you can speak to that in a person first, and even when I've messed up, people have spoken to the good nature that they've seen in me, I think things can often change a lot more easily and in a way that doesn't cause embarrassment for anyone as well. Yeah, in a better way. So I'd support that as well. So they'd be my three things. And I'm working on all of them myself as well. I'm not trying to come across like I'm this perfect one because my friends will call me out on different things, but I'm just saying,
Well, this is
that's what
good. It's good that people, and it's really important. It's about who you surround yourself with too, because I want people are not yes people. People who are going to tell me, "Hey, what you do? That don't make no sense. You need to apologize. You got it wrong. Let's look at this." Do you know what I mean? That's what is great to have people around you to keep you grounded and to keep you always, challenging yourself in what we do every day. I think is really important. But let me just, my time with you is nearly up. So, but I'm going to do something a bit lighter. If there was to be a film made about Christian Weaver's life, who would you like to play you?
Oh wow, what a question. What a question.
Come on, who would it be?
No, the problem is I don't really watch films, so I'm having to just think, right, who are
What?
the actors I've seen?
You need to get a life, mate.
I know. Films and TV and Netflix. I don't watch them. Let me think. But I can tell you I can tell you the type of person I would like it to be. And I would like it to be, so I can't think of any big names, but that's quite convenient because in some ways I would love it to be a person that's maybe, crafting their own path. Maybe society hasn't yet seen the talent they have. And I would love it to be a person
Like
who,
up and coming.
yeah,
Yeah.
up and coming, genuinely got raw talent, but maybe they haven't finessed it yet. I would love it to be a person
Listen
like
to
that. 'Cause I
you.
think that represents so many of us as well. Like I think very often those that maybe have, when I look at people that I look up to, those that have had the maximum impact when, in the end, very often the early years, the years where maybe other people were really, it was popping for them. They're maybe a bit more in the distance. They're in the library. They're working away quietly. Nobody's heard of them, and then at the very end, actually, what ends up probably being a larger part of their life, they have real influence and impact because they really honed their craft. So yeah, as opposed to being a big name person, maybe someone that's on that journey, that would be amazing. So yeah,
What's one of your favorite quotes that have
favorite
impacted you?
quotes. Oh, always act out of strength, not weakness, is a big one. I don't know if that was a quote or something that I just thought up one time, but
Yeah, I think it is a quote.
that's
I'm
a big
trying
one
to
for me.
think who it was
Yeah,
by, but yeah.
yeah, yeah. That's probably the one that's guided me the most. It's the one that I'm sure in every day in my life there will be an encounter that happens where I have to draw for that. So
Okay,
yeah.
so
What would
I've
yours be out
come.
of curiosity? Have you
Oh,
got one for me?
my one of my best quotes is, I can't remember the whole word because but um it's about would you take, oh, who is it by? Would you, it's not about, it's about who would be the person who would ride the bus with you when the limo breaks down.
Ooh, yeah,
Yeah, I think it's
yeah,
Maya
yeah.
Angelou. I think that's a Maya Angelou one. And that always fascinates me. It's about who are the real people, you know, who are there for you. Because it's interesting when everything's good, people are happy in it. You know,
Mm,
and it's like that one. The true sense of character you see is somebody is not in good times; it's in bad times.
absolutely.
You know, so
Yeah,
that's the
yeah.
kind of quotes that I've always loved. So I've come to visit you in Manchester, Christian, and you pick me up in your car. What is your go-to play on your playlist at the moment? Come on, tell
Hey,
us what track you're
hey, the
listening.
playlist. All right, the playlist right now. Right now, I know there's a lot of debate about it right now. There's a few drill songs, in fact, that in a
Which
very
one is
ironic way. It might, I'm not sure if I should say that. And there's a few artists where they might be controversial, but in terms of getting me in the mind state to like a gym session or whatever,
Yeah.
I find good. There's a rapper called Loyal Kana who he's got quite a calm rapping style. I probably listen to him at some point every day. And there's another artist called Arlo Parks. They're kind of in a similar genre, and I really like her music. They're probably the main artists right now.
That you're listening to.
Yeah,
So
but you know what?
I've
Whatever.
been picked up, everybody, and I'm in the car with Christian, and we're getting some.
Yeah, I'm checking. I'm just seeing now. Yeah, there's a few names. Yeah, yeah. A bit of Burner Boy. So
Yeah,
yeah. A nice
see,
mix.
see. And on leaving, what is the one thing you do which is for your time for Christian? What is your Zen? What do you do to just away from, because you're dealing with heavy stuff? Come on, let's just be real. So how does Christian look after his well-being? What is it that what is the one thing that you do to get that headspace, that calm?
Yeah. For me, it's being outside. So in actual fresh air, I find it
Mm,
the most
mm,
liberating,
mm.
beautiful thing. So if I can get out, I wake up quite early, and if the first thing I can do is just get into fresh air, that for me, I actually literally feel my brain just like
No,
just freeing
trust me,
itself
I
off. It's a
hear.
beautiful. So and
Mm.
yeah, it's funny as you get older, you recognize like what are your fundamentals? What are the things that mean that if you're doing maybe three things, you will generally have a good day or a better day. And for me, one of those is always just get outside, give yourself just on my own as well, but just the time to think things through. There was a road when I used to live in Nottingham. There's a road near where I used to live. It's called Westdale Lane. It's quite about a mile long. And I used to say, there's no problem in my life that I will have that if I don't on my own walk the top of Westdale Lane, back down to my house, and just think about the issue, I won't have come to the solution by the end of it. Because I think if you just give yourself that genuine time to think through a
Yeah.
problem while you're in movement, it can be so effective. So I think for me, I class that as a partly a hobby. I love doing that, and with other people, which I class as a hobby, genuine, but also just for my own mental well-being. I think that's huge.
Oh,
And what
yeah.
would your yeah? I'd be intrigued.
Mine is 5:30 meditation. And I used to think meditation was a load of poop, you know, like, bleh, bleh, bleh. Honestly, I used to have real negative views about it. But that space to just center myself sets me up
Mm,
for the day. It's the quietness. I'm a bit like you, nature I love. You know, sometimes just standing on the ground, not when it's rainy like this, but and barefoot and feeling nature on my feet and just looking up and feeling the sun
Oh
on my
my
face
gosh. Yeah.
changes my whole perspective. And it's like you said, as you get older, the things that you find such enjoyment and peace and calmness is just, it's very different to when I was younger. But
How do you start
yeah,
meditation? Because I'm in the phase that you've just described where I know it's meant to be this amazing thing, but I can't quite figure out how I make this
listen,
work. Is it
don't
really going to
worry.
be?
When you pick me up from Manchester, we give you the little tips and how you can start. Because to me, but you start small, 2 minutes, 5, and you build it up. Because honestly,
Yeah.
I used to look at it and think, what is this? No. But you know what? Once you get into it, because you won't look back, I'm telling you, you will not look back. So I will give you some tips outside the
Okay.
studio.
It's a
Yeah.
deal.
So I want to say thank you for this. I really enjoyed it. It's so nice to touch base. It's been a while, but plug. Where can people get the book? Where can people follow you? We've got a website, all of that. Plug away.
Thank you. So yeah, and I've really enjoyed this too. So yeah, I mean, even after this, like I hope we keep in better contact over the next few years. Do you
Let's
know what I
do.
mean? But I think for me, yeah, christianweaver.com is currently in there's more to develop on it, but that's certainly the landing page now. But yeah, I would love it if people would connect with me on my Instagram, my LinkedIn, my Twitter. So most will come up if you type in Christian Weaver into Google. But I think namely my Instagram and my Twitter. My Instagram is Christian Weaver, the number 60, and then my Twitter is @Christian Kamali, which is Kamali. And yeah, I always loved, especially if people have watched podcasts like this, like any thoughts, feedback, campaigns that you're working on, I'm all for it. I'd love to hear it. And yeah, it would be great to connect with people.
Where can we purchase the book?
Yeah, the book are everywhere, Diane. So
That's
Waterstones,
good.
Amazon.
Everywhere.
Amazon is often the cheapest place, but of course, if you have a local Waterstones, the majority of them are stocking it now. So both books are there, and I would encourage people as well. This message of empowerment, definitely your right to protest, but actually, if it's maybe for a child, a sibling, a friend, you want them to be a bit more clued up on the law. The Law in 60 Seconds, A Pocket Guide to Your Rights, is something I would really suggest for them. It's a book I wish I'd had when I was younger, to be honest.
Yeah.
And yeah, both of those are available.
Well, we will put stuff out there, so I will put all Christian's details, and I'm looking forward to receiving my book, Law in 60 Seconds. Because boy, I'm going to be promoting the beat out of that book. Trust me, because I think it is so needed. So, Christian, enjoy the rest of your day. I really appreciate you coming on here, because everything you've said is what we need to hear. And I would encourage all of you out there, support the man. Yes, look the book here. Support him, because that's what we need to move forward. We need to support one another, collaboration, mentorship. These things are key to making change. So, as you know what I'm going to say, guys, until next time, we're going to say a bye to Christian, and I'll see you next Friday, same time, same place.
Thank you.
We're out of here.
Hey, it's your girl Diane Riney. Join me every Friday, 7 p.m. on LCBN TV. Tea and a chat. Great topics, great guests. Be there.